Okay, this is a summary of summaries. I'm going to call this. We at this point have done 4 different systems against flat betting, those being Martingale, Paroli, the 1326, and Fibonacci. The Martingale and Fibonacci are just up here in the title in red because they are negative progressive systems. Paroli and 1326 are here in green because they are positive progressive systems. It doesn't mean that they came out ahead, as profitable or losing. Green and red will mean those things down here in the chart, but just for up here, okay? Negative progressive, positive progressive versus flat betting. Okay, so I wanted to before I moved on into other systems, just kind of see where we are with these, see how everything works out. Okay, first up was Martingale. Martingale, we played 420 hands against flat betting. This number is a lot higher than on the other systems because during those tests I was doing single deck and double deck games. The other ones were in the low 300s. So we got more out of this. I'll probably get around to running some Martingale, a new Martingale series. I'm not going to throw this data out using 6-deck shoes. Also, it's worth noting that for this series, it was the flat better started with 50 bet units, like it always does, and it bet a single unit per hand. And that's how all the other systems went too. Martingale would bet 2 units per hand, and also started with 100 units. And so this is something I'm going to have to we'll hopefully get sort of fixed up as I do a 6-deck shoe. The kind of weird thing, or the reason I did that, so Martingale bet 2 units. The reason I did that was I wasn't using half unit chips at the time. I was just using the 1s, the 5s, and the 10s. As you know from watching, I started using a quarter to represent a half of a unit. And so when I was doing this is when I first started doing all of these. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to just keep it, to whole units. And I eventually, obviously, did have to start using half units. And the way Martingale works is you would eventually have to use quarter units, which is fine. I will work that out one way or another. Of course, if you're playing like a low limit table, you're not going to be able to keep splitting down into half units. If you're, say, at a $100 table, sure, you can go from 100 to 50 to 25 to 12 and a half somehow. Getting to 6 1/4 might be a little weird, but that's getting pretty far into the system. Anyways, for this series, doing it that way with Martingale having a $10 or a 2-unit wager, and the table max being 100 units, made this put Martingale up by 131.5 units, flat better up 11 units. That would be similar to 187.50 on a $5 table, or $55. This column represents the gain per hand. So this is the amount that they gained divided by the number of hands played. So 131.5 divided by 420 is 31.3 units per hand. So if that's a $5 table, that's $1.55 or so per hand. This column represents the delta between the two. So this shows us that, while Martingale made this much, flat better also made 0.026 units per hand. So Martingale bettered flat betting by 0.287 units per hand, which is, fairly substantial. Now, here's the thing. This is not adjusted for the fact that the Martingale was betting basically at a double rate to flat betting, even though, so what we need to do is we need to in my opinion, cut these numbers in half for Martingale. Well, not this one. these numbers in half for Martingale, because he was betting twice as much, and so it's like a 2-to-1 ratio. He made, even though when Martingale busted out, he busted out for the full 100, when he really only should have busted out for 50. So this won't be perfect, but it should be a little bit, at least a little bit closer to reality, especially as we compare it to these other systems. So what we're really looking at is an adjusted gain of 65 3/4 for Martingale, which turns out to an adjusted per hand gain of 0.157 units per hand, with the delta between the two going down to a 0.131 improvement over flat betting. Okay, so yes, there are some flaws in here. I think, once 420 hands, that's all we did. That's far from being perfectly definitive, but it's a start. Like it's what we have to start with. As I run more, these numbers, I'll still use these numbers, and I'll use these adjusted numbers. They will still factor in, but they'll become less and less significant because we'll have more hands, and so they'll get sort of absorbed while still having some weight. Okay, right? Does that make sense? Anybody who's really good at statistics out there can comment in that's it's not perfect. I think I think it's a reasonable compromise. Okay. So, anyways, Martingale, according to this, beat flat betting, and if you watch the full series and the summary, you remember that Martingale did bust out a couple times, and still could afford to do another $50 or 50 unit buy-in. Okay. So, moving on. Next, we did Paroli. Paroli is a positive progressive system. Let me just say first, the idea behind Martingale is that you double your prior bet on every loss, with the intention of closing your losing streak with a gain of 1 unit. So your betting goes 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. It goes like that. It gets a little bit different dealing with double downs, splits, blackjacks. I worked all those out, I think, to reasonable satisfaction in the video. Okay, Paroli, positive progressive. Paroli, you let your bet ride, or your winnings ride, up to 3 in a row. So Paroli, you start with a wager of 1. If you win, your next wager is the 1 that you originally bet, plus another 1. And then if you win that, it's those 2, and again, so you get up to 4. And then we would stop at 3 consecutive wins and start the cycle over, which you can do Paroli however you want. If you want to go, say, 7 consecutive wins, you can do that. But the most common way is to do 3 consecutive wins. As you can, what else to say? Yeah, there's some other weird things that happen, like I said, on splits and double downs. Those I think I worked all those out to satisfaction while we ran it. The risk that Paroli, okay, so Martingale, the risk is losing streak and you busting out or hitting the table limit, because you keep doubling your bet, and it's not uncommon to get 6 or 7 losing hands in a row. Paroli, the danger is choppy back and forth action, being that you lose one, and whereas flat betting just says, okay, I lost that, or I'm sorry, Paroli, you win that, and whereas you bet 1 and you win, and then you put the whole thing back out there, and then you lose, so you could just end up with nothing, until you have won the 3 in a row, because you're letting it ride, it's all out there. Whereas flat betting, if you win and then lose, you're just at flat. Okay, so, sorry, just thinking for a second. This is a dangerous thing. Anyways, as it came out, Paroli ended up the 326 hands down 27.5 units. Flat betting was down 17.5 units. This is 137.50 on a $5 table. This is 87.50. It works out to an average loss of 0.084 units per hand, or for flat betting, a negative 0.54 per hand. So this, obviously, this shoe or this series these cards weren't as good, and that's what we're seeing here. Still, Paroli was not able to overcome the house advantage. It did on some shoes, but not at the end. So at the end, it had a difference of being down a 0.03. Sorry, that's a little blurry. 0.03 units worse than flat betting for this series. Okay. Next, we move to the 1-3-2-6 betting system, which is a positive progressive system. We ran 333 hands. The 1-3-2-6 is that those indicate the bet units that you bet in the series. So you start with a wager of 1. If you win, your next wager is 3. If you win after the 3, your next wager is 2. If you win after the 2, your next wager is 6. Anytime you lose, you start the cycle over. Okay? The dangers of the 1-3-2-6 is even worse than Paroli with the choppy action, where if you win one, not only do you leave your original wager out there, plus the one that you won, you have to pull out another one from your stack and add it onto there. And then if you lose that, you're actually down 1. Whereas Paroli, you'd still be down, you'd still just be flat. Now, once you get up to 6, then if you can complete the cycle, it works out nicely. If you don't complete the cycle, you are either down or you're not making anything. But even at that, the 1-3-2-6 brought in 23.5 units. The flat better brought in 14 units. So the cards were decent. That's an average per hand of 0.07 units, or a positive 0.04 units for flat betting. So, on a $5 table, that's like 35 cents a hand. So that is 35 cents a hand. Okay, it's, if you're willing to, I suppose, get paid 35 cents a hand, it's not bad. I guess it's better than losing. Anyways, the difference was a 0.028 units per hand. So that's like, on a $5 table, at about 11-12 cents. Don't really think about that. You have to think in units. Yeah, the cards were decent. Cards were okay. Cards were not very good. 1-3-2-6 is coming out ahead. Okay, Fibonacci. Fibonacci was 336 hands. Came out in the positive of 104.5 units, where the flat better was down 4.5 units. So that would be 522.50 on a $5 table, or down 22.50 on a $5 table. Even though I say think in units, you got to put some context into it. If you're playing at a 25 or 15, you can do your own math. That gave Fibonacci a gain of 0.311 units per hand, and the flat better was down 0.031 per hand. Difference of a 0.324 units per hand on the average. Now, you can see the cards were not exactly good or bad. They were, pretty much right down the middle. Fibonacci really took off and quite clearly outpaced everything else. Just before we go any further, let me just be clear. I'm not endorsing any of these systems. This is educational only. All right? So, to sum those up, or to sum up the flat better at least, I guess I'll leave that. The flat better played 1,415 hands for a net win of 3 units, or 0.002 units per hand. Now that is slightly better, I guess, than the standard house edge, which is maybe, like, let's say it's 0.5% expected loss. So being positive at all is a big deal. Or it shows that we got some decent cards. Pretty close to just break even, though. Anyways, thought that before we go into, I wanted to go into the next comparison. It would be interesting to see how the 4 that we've looked at so far all come together. Let's see. Martingale, I don't think I would do it. It's too dangerous. You can so very quickly get into very high wagers because you're always doubling your bet. You're going to hit table limits. You're going to bust out. I mean, if you have plenty of cash, go and play. And if you can even find, I guess, like instead of a 1 unit to 100 unit range, or like a $5 to $500 table, if you can find a 1 to a 200 unit, otherwise a 5 to 1,000, that gives you more room for Martingale. That you go work farther down into the loss series, before you hit that table max. Once you hit the table max, you're essentially flat betting. You still, big risk of running out, or of busting out. But if you have enough money, a large enough bankroll, I guess you could do this with the hopes that you don't get into a, I'm not even sure how many consecutive losses. Probably around 10. You think you can avoid 10 losses in a row, or that as this worked out for Martingale, that your wins will outweigh your losses where you bust out. Martingale could work, but you need a high table limit, or a high multiple table limit. So like 500, 100, probably a little bit too tight. A 1 to 200, or which would be a 5 to 1,000, or a $25 to a $5,000 limit, if you play that way, or 100 to you do the math. You need some room. Paroli being positive progressive, I didn't like the way that it suffered during choppy action. And the 1326 had that too. And I think you'll find that choppy action, for seasoned players, choppy action is most common. Win, lose, win, lose, win, lose, win, win, lose, 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 win, lose. That's going to chew you up. Same thing here. And I'm not saying that just because it came out in the negative. It just didn't feel like, to me, for how I like to play and how I like to approach my money management, the way I would like to play. 1326, it did come out positive. Again, though, you get a lot of this choppiness in here, and it's dangerous. It eats you up. So if you go back and look at the series, you'll see that it got here because it had some good wins, but it also had some losses. And I say this when I'm doing the video, that I wasn't feeling it. I didn't like doing it. Yes, I did like when I got up to the 6 and I would win, but I didn't like this middle zone of the 1326 system, the 3s and the 2s, and the risk of losing and not making it to the 6. My personal opinion, maybe you like it, maybe it works for you. I mean, it did work here. Can't argue with that. Okay, Fibonacci obviously did the best of the bunch. I was not expecting Fibonacci to do so well. Now, because Fibonacci sequence does not progress as quickly as a Martingale, and the idea behind Fibonacci being that you just finish your losing cycles at break even, not trying to go one up by Martingale. And if you watch the series, I bring out the Fibonacci sequence. So this is, when you lose, you move this way by increasing your bets, and when you win, you move back. You don't go back to the start like on Martingale. You just go back 2 positions, and if you win again, you go back 2 positions, and if you lose, you go back into the higher wagers until you can get back down to where you close out your cycle. Then you start over. Keeping track of this is a lot more difficult. So if you're gonna use Fibonacci, write down or take the sequence with you, same way that you take the strategy card with you. Don't take something this big. Take something small like the card. Like you print those out there. Well, they're usually a little bit bigger than a playing card, but this, you could easily fit all this information on like a business card, and then you just need to, and I guess maybe keep your finger on it or something like that, and keep track of where you are and what's been going on. I don't know, maybe use a pencil, because sometimes you might have to make a mark because you when you lose a double down or multiple losses, you have to go extra positions and then work your way back. I would keep your loss column over on the side, so that I wouldn't get confused while we're doing this. The casino's not going to do that. They're going to put the chips in the rack and, new hand. What would you like to do, player? Okay. So anyways, yeah, the Fibonacci doesn't progress as fast. We never got past, I don't think we ever got past 13. When we were at 13, and if we had lost, the next wager would have been 21. If I remember correctly, the player still had 24 bet units in his stack, so we could have covered that one. We got to 8 a few times. I think we only got to 13 once. In Martingale, that's 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. You can't double 64, so you would have been pushing right up against the table max, right in here, and if not, having busted out already, because Fibonacci also, you're not just wagering 13. This is compounded losses, so it's 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 8 plus 13. So if you lost that 13, you're actually down 26, 29, 31. You'd be down actually 33. Right, you'd be down 33 from wherever you started. So yeah, you would still have enough to cover the 21. No, you wouldn't. He must have been, it wasn't at the very start. He must have been up a little bit. That's the only reason why he had some left. So it's more likely that coming to the table with 50 units that you're going to bust out before you hit the table max. And the Fibonacci doesn't stop here. It keeps going. The way, if you can see it, the way it works is you take the last two numbers and you add them up, and that's the next one. So 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 21 plus 34 is 55, 34 plus 55 is 89, 55 plus 89 is 144, 144 plus 89, I don't know. Get your calculator, okay? Anyways, yeah, so Fibonacci was kind of fun. It was nice to be able to close out at break even. Blackjacks and double down wins and multiple hand wins on splits. We ended up just treating those as bonuses, and I haven't really. That's what it does say to do for blackjack wins of 3-2. I don't really see a lot out there about how to deal with the double down, which is where it was really helpful to keep the loss column over on the side. Now you could use double downs if you're down in the sequence to cancel out your losses and start your cycle over. That's not what we did. We just kept those as bonus wins. Those are, again, like decisions you'll have to make on your own, just like it is to decide how many units to come to the table with, whether to play at all or not, whether to play, if you're willing to play at a 6-5 blackjack table instead of the traditional 3-2, which unfortunately we're seeing more and more of these days. So again, I'm not endorsing it, but I found Fibonacci to be rather interesting, and the results show. Now, if you go back and look at the series, every single shoe was a winner for Fibonacci, even when the flat better lost. we didn't get any cases where Fibonacci busted out. It came close. Out of 7 shoes, being up 104.5 units, that means that you could still bust out on shoes 8 and 9 and still be up by 4.5. Presumably, and if you look at the summary from the series, in order for Fibonacci to be down that far, flat betting would most likely have to also have suffered losses. So Fibonacci would, I would think, and as we run more tests, we will, I guess, find out a little bit better, would beat the house edge or beat flat betting out of 336 hands. Or if we ran another series of 7, and let's say, you know, you busted out, let's say you had the same performance but busted out a couple times, and how that would bring him down would still be should still be in the positive. Of course, he could bust out on the next 6 shoes in a row, so which you certainly wouldn't cover. All right, anyways, hope you find that interesting. I think it's good to pause sometimes and take a look at things, that while we're comparing particular systems to the flat, let's look at how they all kind of come together. All right? Anyways, like and subscribe, please, if you're enjoying these. Thanks for watching. Bye.